LeahKarrer. I'm with the Global Environment Facility International Waters team. One of my primary responsibilities is working with our partners to develop large marine ecosystem projects. We've learned that the success of large marine ecosystems is dependent on quite a number of factors. Perhaps most central is a sense of trust, a trust among partners and particularly among countries, since there is such a focus on the transboundary aspect. And this is kind of the heart of why we encourage a transboundary diagnostic analysis. That's kind of the first way of bringing all the players together, particularly the governments, identifying what are the major problems, as well as opportunities from an ecological, socioeconomic, and governance standpoint, and then using those insights to kind of prioritize what are the real issues that need to be addressed. That then, of course, leads into the Strategic Action Program, where the governments, now that they have a kind of agreed sense of what's happening in the region, to agree then on what needs to happen. A second critical lesson learned is the importance of working at all scales, from the communities all the way to cabinet. So we call it the community to cabinet approach. Typically, most of the large marine ecosystems tend to work more at a high-level scale because we're trying to bring governments together, and that means working typically at the minister level or even the presidents, prime ministers, depending on the region. However, we also see that it really is important to have engagement at all scales. That often means there are demonstration projects going on at a national or community level. Another key factor is engaging all sectors. So while it may seem obvious, there's the fisheries sector, there's many other aspects, many other activities going on both in the ocean as well as upstream that need to be incorporated because of their effects as well as they're dependent on these resources. So in addition to fisheries, there's shipping, there's port development, tourism, both hotel industry as well as on the water sports activities, diving, snorkeling, for example. Aquaculture is increasing, and then there are new developments such as renewable energy from wind and hydropower. All of these different sectors need to be part of the planning, and actually that's part of why marine spatial planning has gotten to be increasingly popular, because it's a way of working between all these different sectors. Now, relatedly is another important lesson, which is the importance of working with all types of players. So this adds yet another complexity. So this means working not only with the governments, but the non-government organizations, community organizations, fishermen's associations, for example, hotel industry associations, as well as academia, and perhaps most interestingly, working with the private sector. And this is an area that we're working increasingly in and recognize the power of the private sector and the fact that ultimately we are trying to work with them to instill more sustainable practices. Now, by bringing in the private sector, we can work with them not only on ensuring more sustainable practices, but also trying to get their buy-in and support for working with the governments to establish standards, regulations, and incentives for good practices. Another important lesson learned is the need to work at a source-to-sea approach, or what's often called ridge-to-reef, where we work not only on looking at what's happening in the ocean, but upstream by working with river and watershed initiatives as well. And by doing so, we ensure that we're looking at the breadth of activities that not only affect the ocean, but also are dependent on the ocean. And that is critical for ensuring sustainable practices, but also for gaining greater buy-in and support for political and public action. The final two lessons learned, I would say, relate to sustainability. One is ensuring long-term governance sustainability so that we ensure that the initiatives that have been developed over the course of the large marine ecosystems with funding from the GEF and many other sources are continued in long-term in perpetuity. And that means institutionalizing many of the practices that have been developed, and particularly, for example, establishment of commissions, conventions, and perhaps the Benguela current large marine ecosystem is one of the best examples. And finally, also thinking about financial sustainability. This means looking for other sources of financing in addition to the GEF, which is fantastic for development of the process and implementation to a point, but ultimately there need to be other long-term sources of financing. And this includes looking to the governments for their support as well as other resources. And that may mean some of the new innovative financing approaches that are coming up, blue bonds, debt for nature swaps, or even impact investors. The worldwide adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals has brought to the forefront the importance of sustainability and the linkages to all aspects of society. In fact, the LMEs have been promoting sustainability throughout the history of their existence. When you look at the LMEs, a critical aspect is transboundary ocean governance, and this has been focused on such major issues as unsustainable fisheries, pollution, habitat degradation, and in doing so, ensuring a healthy, vibrant marine ecosystem worldwide. Ocean health is fundamental to providing ecosystem services, such as food security provided by seafood, which relates to SDG number 2, no hunger, as well as water filtration to provide clean water, which is SDG number 6, providing tourism and recreational opportunities, and finally, supporting climate change mitigation and adaptation by providing protection from shoreline storms and flooding, as well as carbon sequestration provided by mangroves, salt marshes, and seagrasses, all of which ties to SDG number 13. All of these, in turn, support decent work and economic growth, which is SDG 8, zero hunger, SDG number 2, and ultimately no poverty, SDG number 1, all of which encompasses the concept of oceans ensuring strong human well-being.